Employees are subs. Hire them or fire them. How about this? We fire everybody and then we hire them back. These are actually very important decisions that we had to make. Since 2015, I was working in a construction company. For the last 6 years, I was privileged to be in more of a management position. And that's where we made a lot of ridiculously dumb decisions. They were ridiculously expensive as well. And my job is just to share with you the experience and opportunities that I got to learn. So maybe it could help you. The first question is, with who can you make more money? Would it be employees or subs? I was really hoping that it would be 100% employees because you're paying them hourly or whatever the salary is. With subs, it would be a lot more expensive because they carry a lot more liability. And it's true to some extent, but it's not as much as I thought it would be. We're looking at 60% of profitability with employees. So you could make a little more. And with subs, you'll be making probably somewhere around 40%, which is good. But in reality speaking, and specifically in construction world, new construction or commercial, you're probably running somewhere at 40% with employees and probably somewhere between 30 and 20% with subs. It all depends on the trade you're dealing with. But it doesn't stop there. The problem comes into what costs you more. Would you say the liability that you carry with the employees or with subs, is it worth the 10 or 20% increase for your employees? And in some cases, yes, if you can work a system with your employees where they never get sick, where they never get hurt, or work 24/6, then yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good strategy. But with subs, what's nicer is that you don't have to worry about them breaking something or hurting themselves. They carry their own licenses, their own insurances. So that's why it's a pretty good idea to compare them both. You have to understand your pros and cons for each employee. So in terms of making more money, I do think you can make between 40 to 60% with employees and then between 20 and 40% with subs. So you do have the little more profit margin. You just have to understand what is it that you really need. Do you need speed? Do you need quality? Or don't want a headache? Do you still want to be profitable? I think I'll answer a full question once we look into more of a headache perspective, just because of it there, you'll actually understand what are you willing to deal with and for what percentage point or for what amount. The next criteria would be speed. So who could work faster? I do think that in 1 hour, if you have reliable and honest guys like we do, and if you have reliable and honest subcontractors that care how they represent your company, then I do think that you could even them out. However, where employees do lose is employees probably will work somewhere between 8 hours. Realistically speaking, they probably will want to get paid vacation, paid leave. In some cases, if you have a really cool system or an agreement with your employees where you can ask them to work 10 hours, maybe like 12 hours a day, which is pretty high demanding job requirement. There's certain days where we have to do it for sure, but on average, you'll have only 8 hours. However, with sub, a lot of them are actually interested working more. They actually think that 12-hour day is a pretty easy day going. I'm only referring to good guys. Obviously, there's always the bad apples, and you just want to avoid them overall. They're horrible in employee factor or a contractor factor. But subs will typically want to do more because they look at it as the quicker I finish the job, the more I get to collect, the more I make per day, or per week, or per month. So to them, it's like a game. Get it done, get out of here, and if it takes 16 hours, they would like to do it. That would obviously include the road trip as well. So they would, at the work itself, they would probably spend between 12 and 14 hours plus the drive and travel. So I do think that you will have a huge privilege working with subs if you have good subs because they're not time crunched. If you have a factor of speed, then you have to understand that a bigger project will probably need to go to a sub. And then employees can handle smaller projects. Why I do think in this specific factor it's nice to have employees is because you can't always give small projects that are really far away to a sub, because if you have really good reliable guys, they will take it, they will help you out, but at one point they're going to say, look, we're tired of traveling that far, and it doesn't pay more, and it has its own challenges. So that's where employees, they're here to help you at the time when you just cannot sub it out. No one just wants to do it because A, it's not profitable, B, it's challenging and difficult and dangerous in some senses, C, it's a very far drive. So you either have to pay a lot out of your own pocket to get it covered, or you just need to have a couple employees that will be able to help you out, and they don't really ask questions. They're grateful that they have work, and that's also a good benefit. To put in comparison for employees and subs, we're probably looking somewhere between 40% efficiency and speed with employees, and then I would give the 60% now to subs just because they do more. They can get more done in one day, and not because they work faster. Sometimes they are because they're more motivated, they have piecework, but they have an opportunity to work more, and they want to work more. And that's the factor. The desire to work more is really important. So quality is such an interesting piece that it all depends on the character, because as employees, so are subs. It all depends how much they respect and value the work that they do. How much do they understand the criticism and the importance of their completion and satisfaction rate? So if we were to put in perspective the residential job, then obviously your criteria of getting the customer satisfied would be very high. When you're working on a tract home or a commercial building, it doesn't matter to some extent. Just because there's no homeowner watching your back, supervisor, I mean, he'll be in and out, he won't be babysitting you. It's kind of, I would say, easier to get away with certain mess ups just because you're not demanded that care of attention. And there's a reason why. Because you're not getting paid for nearly as much as you would in residential. So it makes sense. The quality factor depends, it's a variable based on where you work and who you do the project for. So that's where quality plays a big factor. It depends what you're pursuing. So, for example, if we're starting a model house where everybody will pay attention to the details, then probably you want good quality standard there, because that will speak for what your company is going to deliver on other houses and other tract models. Then if we're talking about regular day-to-day, doing average 1,000 square foot house, then you probably need more speed to get it done. And then obviously quality comes as a secondary option, just because people don't really pay attention to the details as we think they do. So to put it in perspective, if you think they care about having a perfectly flat roof, or if you think they want to have perfectly flat walls, I would say no. I would say they probably care more about having their tile floor straight, the line to make sure it's straight. I do think that having door hinges lined up and having no cracks in the ceiling would make more logical sense than all the other factors, just because people don't really understand what quality is. We can put the same perspective as what percentage or what level of quality do they want. It's a very flexible topic in terms of quality, just because you have to understand what your customers want and give it to them. Same thing, I would say, crooked wall. Okay, the wall is crooked. What catches more of your attention? Crooked wall or a crack in your ceiling? Probably they will never see a crooked wall. It's very rare, because when we install houses, we see crooked walls all the time. The amount of percentage that I see after they ask us to come back and fix up the flooring after they had to readjust the wall, it's very small percentage to compare to how many houses we do. So I would say you have to really balance out the quality. Employees in general will care more. They will probably understand that they're here in the company where they make money for their housing and bread, and they will want to have good reputation in the company. For subs, they're working with us, they're working with somebody else, they're jumping between different stores. So to them, it's like, look, you're just one of the options I have. So even if I do mess up on the job, even if you never want to give me a project again, I'm okay, because I have other sources of revenue coming in. So they probably will care less. And in percentage speaking, I would give 65% to employees and then 35% to subs. The next topic is headache, and I can give it to you for free. The easiest headache to get is just go to work and you'll have headache, or just stay at home and do nothing. You'll have a headache just because you're doing nothing. So I do think that you have to understand how much headache do you want, and then how much do you want to get paid for it. What kind of headache is acceptable and what kind of headache you would hate to have. So with employees, headache is probably at 70%. And the rest is 30% with subs. And it's true to all trades that I had to work with and experience. It's probably somewhere there. The reason is, if the tools are breaking, who's taking care of it? We're taking care of it. How about van breaking? We have to care about it. How about registration expiring? How about employees break something or hurt something? They choose to mess up on the job and now we have to replace the whole job. Like, it's expensive. Employees, they cost a lot more. want a little more than subs do in terms of work. The sub understands we have work and we don't have work. It depends on the season. It depends on how the market's reacting. With employees, they really need work. They count on us having work. So it's a good thing. Like, it's not a bad thing, but there is a lot more headache with employees. And especially if you have employees that just call you 4, 5, 7 times a day and they just ask you same questions and they repeat daily. Those employees, they're just not worth it, to my opinion. I feel like you already have such a high stake with running employees and managing them. You probably want as least amount of headache as possible already once you have employees. So to put in conclusion, I would say having employees is important. When we started running the whole ratio up and down and analyzing what would work better and what percentage would work better, we got to the idea in the beginning that maybe we could run employees 100%. And then we realized that it's nearly impossible because the work we run is super inconsistent. One day we can have 2 projects, 3 projects, second day we can have 50 projects. And it's impossible to hire and to fire employees daily on regular basis. You have to have a consistent amount of work for them. And then for subs, we thought about having subs 100%. That would be the next criteria we went to. And that would be unreasonable just because then subs don't really care about you. They don't really want to show up if they don't feel like. They don't want to take projects that are not comfortable or that are not good for their specific needs. So the ratio we went with having employees and subs is to the opposite of what the headache is. So if employees cause us 70% of headache, then we probably want to have around 30% of employees. And then the rest, obviously, it's easier to manage. It's less headache. The speed is more. The money is less, but the headache is less. In our business, we've been testing back and forth, and the ratio we stuck with is 70% would be contractors and 30% employees. And that helps us with FAR jobs, with very sensitive and important crucial jobs, with running unprofitable tasks and favors to do the volume. They would be there to get big houses done. They would be there to get the day-to-day operations covered. So if this was helpful, maybe you could consider watching the next video.